right. All right. How's it going? Wow. Thank you all for coming out. I'm Jason, founder, CEO of Arize. I'm also a developer. I build as much as the team doesn't want me to still deliver PRs. I do. So I love having my hands in the tech. I love building. So I do think I'm kind of like you all out there too, trying to figure this stuff out. We're based in Silicon Valley. Arize is observability evaluation. You'll see us kind of as an AI engineering platform these days. I'll be telling you more about that. And our journey's been a fascinating one, kind of deep in the AI space. What we try to do is we'll bring this out to from Silicon Valley out. Like we tend to be pretty technical, pretty deep. So feel free. We try to put the marketing aside and kind of show you some real stuff. So excited to have you all here for this event. A little bit about Arize too. We as an observability evaluation platform, I think we're one of the leaders. We have some amazing customers from Uber, Instacart, Spotify, Etsy, TripAdvisor, Priceline, Pepsi. Just incredible, Vanguard, incredible set of companies kind of using us right now. So we get this really interesting purview. I get to see everything people are doing, both bad and good. So we try to coalesce what we see, try to bring that and educate to everyone else. So this would be fun today. So we've got an awesome lineup from the Google Cloud team and a bit of a deep demo on evals and then a panel with Wayfair, one of our customers. So observability evaluation and experimentation. Quick question for the group here is, how many of you know what evals or evaluation is? Okay. I mean, it's more than last year, which is great. So we're going to be spending some time going into this and going into a little more depth on what this means. I guess the question for you is, how many of you have actually run LLM-as-a-judge and evals? Okay, that's awesome. We'll be hopefully telling you a little bit about what that is. I'll show you what it looks like in product. We'll go through it in a little bit of depth here. So first off, I see team after team starting with CSVs today. Like you go to a customer, they're building this agent or assistant, and you're like it's a well-known company, and behind the scenes, what's powering it is, go figure, Excel or Google Docs, and you have basically Excel sheets of prompts and responses is a very common place I'm seeing people start. And it's not wrong to start here. I mean, it's okay. You got to start somewhere. And so, but building. I think everyone I see these days wants to build, automation into the products, the SaaS products you have. How do I build workflows that actually change the way people are doing things? How do I do cursor for X inside my product? And you just can't do that with Excel sheets. You can't run your product and develop and improve these systems with this interface. So I think a lot of us in the last year, we've been out there kind of espousing this for a while. Team after team after team is doing kind of observability, evaluation, and prompt development now. So I think the challenge here is it's just really painful to do this and kind of when you're living in this. And really, what I see teams moving towards is something where you have kind of tracing observability. You want to collect the data. You need to collect the data in the first place to do any analysis. You have evaluations, which I'll walk you through, which is kind of using AI to assess your system, LLM-as-a-judge. And then you have experimentation, where you're kind of hopefully making a little more science out of this. And then you have software like ours or open source software like Phoenix, that help you do this in well-known and well-established workflows. Where we've gone from, we started off in observability. We started off 5 years ago. We've since raised like 130 million. And like observability is kind of just getting the data in the first place. But you realize once you have the data, You need to understand whether it's actually correct. Is it responding correctly? Is it doing the right thing? So evaluation is kind of how do you assess this thing is doing the right thing? And then once you have those metrics, you then want to make a change. You want to change something and actually affect that. So prompt IDE has been something that's been growing in our feature set. And whether those prompts live in GitHub or they live in a prompt hub where you're serving them from, this is kind of this is the core platform. This is, I would say, the core. It was like Datadog started with traces and logs and metrics, and that was the 3 pillars of cores. This is the core of this AI engineering vertical, the agent vertical. On top, you have Alex, which is kind of, we're building trying to build a cursor for AI engineers to basically automate your workflows. So AI automation to help you build AI. This is it. And any of you building AI applications, agents, you've got you got to try our open source software, just pip install it or something. It really is hard to build a high quality agent or AI, any AI application without using something like us or our competitor. As you dig down, what does this look like underneath it? What do these platforms look like? Unlike Datadog, we span both production and development. There's just this rail of data that sits between development and production that you just can't get away from. The evals that you build and work on in development, you want to use in production. The annotations of your production data end up feeding into your data sets, which you use for development. And so there's just all this web of ties between these. The other thing is underneath, I'll show you in a second, underneath a large framework, you're going to get 1,000 different API calls. And just all the frameworks, whether ADK from Google or LangGraph, all have tracing just built in. So tracing is a first-class citizen in most of the AI space, which is a little crazy, but it's just because you've got 100 distributed system calls in one little line of code. So you need tracing to troubleshoot and debug and improve these. But it's not just tracing. There's human annotations and workflows and evals that tie in. So we'll show you a bit about what this looks like. As you think about evaluations, there's kind of a spectrum of kind of ways in which you might understand your system and try to analyze what's going on. LLM-as-a-judge is using AI or LLMs to judge your system. This area, LLM-as-a-judge has exploded. I have product managers writing evals today to assess the quality of the product. I have engineers writing evals to make sure the tool calls were correct and parameters were extracted correctly. So LLM-as-a-judge is kind of anywhere in the system where it's not simple code to check if it's correct, but you need some, is this trajectory kind of correct over the answers? So trajectory evals has been, is it converging for agents has been a hot one recently. So anywhere it just takes some amount of intelligence to assess your system's quality, LLM-as-a-judge is going to be prevalent. We just have workflows that help you run this stuff and run it over the data we collect. There's code-based evals. I would say a little less used, but they're still used. And these are what you think they are, which is just code running and checking the quality of something. And then human annotations, I would say, to get these systems right, you need some amount of human annotations to assess the quality of them. It helps you tune your evals and tune your system. So these are kind of like the three on the right here are going to, on the left if you're facing the stage, are going to be the ones that kind of use day in, day out. As you think about what goes on, this is like a LangGraph. I think this is a LangGraph call. You'll get hundreds of traces, and you'll get hundreds of calls to different things in the system. Sometimes I have customers with literally thousands of spans and parallel calls to the system to support their agent. So you kind of need, actually this is probably LUM index, but you kind of need this to assess what's going on underneath. You need it to replay a problem and actually fix what's going on underneath. So this is agents are complicated, and you kind of need this stuff to trace it. And This is an example like of a kind of something, a pattern, a pattern we've seen somewhere. What an agent or a system might look like. Normally you got, and just an example of how complicated it gets. It gets even more complicated than this. But typically what you're dealing with is, so there's LLM calls here, and there's normally like a call to router function or something that's doing tool calling and determining your branches. And you can also do it levels down than this, but this is the simplest case where you've got a router, a branch, a decision branch, and some execution where on that branch it's actually doing something. It might be searching for a product line, it might be doing customer support, but this is like an example of maybe a, I don't know, medium level complexity agent. And what you kind of need to do is be able to like break the system, like every great engineering team, you need to be able to break the system into constituent parts, test those parts, make sure they're working, and then build out checks and maybe unit tests for those. And examples of like just breaking this up, like what customers might do is you might build an eval on the router side. Did it call the right tool? Did it do the right thing? Did it extract the right? Did it extract the right parameters to do the tool call there? Then there's kind of component level. So you're evaluating, maybe did it do the right outcome? Maybe I have AI search and I'm trying to make sure it's doing the search correctly. And so you kind of break them up into different evaluations and different constituent parts and then build the evaluations for things. I have some customers that are, might have 20 different evals on some agent they built and are spending, this customer I'm thinking of spends a lot every year, but maybe it's $1 million a month just on evals. So people are doing this to make your systems run really well. You'll do it. Maybe it's single-digit % of your total revenue on it. This particular one has a lot of revenue, but like to make your system run well, you kind of need to do some amount of testing and checking and automation to make sure the stuff is working when you roll stuff out. The way this abstract idea of evals, I'm going to make it more concrete into like 2 ways people do it. There's a flow that's a development flow, and I'll show you in platform, which is in this kind of simple form, which is this is my team's coming with a CSV. I load it up into the playground. I'm iterating on a prompt with generations, and I'm running evals on every playground run. This is kind of what I would call as a early development workflow. Maybe I'm not building this complex agent, it's just prompts and responses in a CSV. So this is kind of workflow number 1 we see, pattern number 1 we see a lot. Pattern number 2 looks something like this, which is what we call online evals, which are spans are coming in, you're tracing your application. Evals are running as a task, typically in a platform like ours. And the task is a template and a model together, some combo of that, and it's generating an eval on kind of every span that we receive. So these are kind of the 2 patterns. It's kind of like a development flow where you're in a playground, and there's kind of an online pattern where you have an online flow. So I'll kind of demo these for you in a second, make these more concrete, but these are kind of the 2 workflows I see predominantly out there in the industry. Bringing it all together, we have visualizations. I'm going to show you like some of these, but you kind of like, now you have evals, what do you do with them? You've got to have workflows to troubleshoot, debug, improve, find where the problems are, visualize those, surface them. So that's kind of the magic of what we're trying to do, is just make it easy to build and troubleshoot your AI. And I'll do a demo for you. Before I hop in the demo, actually, I wanted to kind of show you one thing is we have, I'm going to show you Arize AX today, which is a SaaS platform. We have, you can get free accounts, there's pro accounts, there's enterprise, it deploys in your infra if you want, but it's designed a little bit for larger teams. You have Phoenix, which is kind of a smaller teams, awesome solution if you want open source and you're passionate about open source, you're an enterprise team and you can't send data out and you just have a small team and want to start. I'm an engineer, I love building with open source, so we're pouring our hearts into this project too. But I'm going to show you first off the enterprise platform here. Cool. All right. Great. So, so first off, and some of you might have had this demo earlier. First off, let me actually just show you a little bit about where we're starting here. What I'm going to show you is just an assistant that helps answer questions. Think of these as questions on a website, maybe. We've traced it. If you're starting off and you're starting with the tracing flow versus the CSV flow, there's a ton of integrations. We're pre-integrated with with Google, with Gemini, with ADK. You name the framework, we've got it. And so just really simple, typically, to start these off in terms of tracing and kind of whatever you want to start off with. Typically, it's a couple lines of code that go in to get this going. And what then happens is under the hood, you've got this trace of calls that are happening. You've got a query that's running, that's asking, it's about the question, and it's kind of synthesizing everything. You've got LLM calls, you've got retrieval calls there. And this is a particular question about an SDK. It says, how do I use an SDK to upload a ranking model? And I've got this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 response that looks, it's hard to see, but it looks very, very, very assured and correct. And normally what we're doing here is we're trying to understand what went under the hood here to build this and where the problems might reside. There's a retrieval here that's retrieving chunks from a doc store to actually synthesize the response. There's an LLM response here that puts these things together and generates an output based upon the data that came in. And what you see at the top here is some evaluations. A little hard to see here, but it's hallucinated and incorrect. And what this is this essentially was those online evals. So I was telling you, there's evals kind of running on jobs that come into the platform. You can run evals on spans. This is a span level eval. You can run it on sessions. So there's session support in platform here, where there might be a conversation over multiple turns, maybe hundreds of turns. So we support session level evals. And you basically can run, once you have these evals, you can then use them to figure out like where your problems are. So this particular one, I'm just looking at a unit of work, a question and answer that was wrong. And it was surfaced to me because it's kind of highlighting it's incorrect here. Normally, one of the other secrets, so all of you, a question for all of you who've done evals, have any of you done explanations on your evals? Any hands? Yeah, critiques or explanations, there's a couple hands. So this is like the secret to figuring out how to solve your problems. The LLM doesn't just tell you why it's wrong, but it doesn't even just tell you it's wrong, but it gives you an explanation of why it thinks it's wrong. In this case, it's maybe highlighting the reference text does not contain this information. It's kind of making up answers. So big picture is we have these set up to run as your data is ingested. It's running your evals and give you power tools to find problems and then go troubleshoot and debug. One workflow, a common workflow, is from this LLM generation. Maybe here I want to add something so that it doesn't respond if it's not in the context. So because you've traced and you know all the data and you know where it is, you can hop to the playground. And what we've done is we filled in your production data down here, what just happened, or development data, whatever you're developing, but we filled in what's come from the framework that it's used to answer it. You've got your prompt template here, which was pulled from the span here. So because it's structured correctly and you correctly trace the data, you can actually do stuff with it. And the do stuff with it here is, say I want to replay. Say it's Turbo and I really want to move to Gemini. And a lot of teams are doing this. So say I'm moving from GPT to Gemini. I can do this on the fly and switch models, test model providers, test different models. I can also add to the prompt here. The example 2 I gave was maybe I want to add something around like answer if not in context. And so I can do manual additions like this, but I can also optimize the prompt on the fly. So there's a whole auto optimization with our assistant, AI assistant, which I can ask it to make it friendlier or do anything. So there's a whole AI automation to be able to optimize your prompts on the fly. But like every good engineer too, I don't want to just fix it with something. I might have broken something test-wise in the data set. So I can grab a data set that I've saved of other examples, and I can save those from, again, structured spans. And then I can retest the change I made against all of the data I have. So a lot of this is about like running these. And what I also did here was I added I added evaluators that can run on the playground runs here as well. And so what these do is they run against the playground runs. This one's a friendly tone detection. Maybe I'm trying to make sure I didn't break anything there, or maybe I'm testing hallucinations. But basically the same evals that I run in production, I can run in the playground as I'm iterating and have them back. I can split these prompts out if I want to run stuff. I can run it on the two prompts side by side, different models. But there's whole workflows here because I've structured the data to ingest it that I can kind of replay and iterate on stuff. There's also what's designed here is an idea of like prompt hub. So I can save off this prompt, say I like this prompt. I can select it from a template of stuff I have, or I can just save these off. And I have teams. I would say team split between all my prompts are in GitHub versus all my prompts are in a prompt hub. Some people are just very code centric. So we have like workflows that support you either way, but it's really nice to be able to save these off and iterate. In addition, I kind of want to highlight some of the fun stuff we have, which is like, sometimes you don't want to do this manually, but you want AI assist. So maybe I don't want to search through all these to find my problems, but like, what are the top 3 reasons for hallucinations, for example? I can spell it wrong, it's okay. So this actually uses AI to search across the data set you have. It uses the explanations we were kind of talking about earlier for evals when it's looking at evals, but it can get different reasons. You can filter on certain, it can build filters for certain spans and span types. So you have AI assist on top of your data. You also have AI assist as you're troubleshooting your individual spans. Think of it like cursor for X. I can, what are the top? I can ask why I didn't reply correctly. I can, in this case, it was kind of like the context. It was hallucinating. It wasn't in the context. If I want to grab me the context information and format as JSON. Let's see. So I can do things like it has all the information of the span. So if I want to build a JSON object of my problem data just to copy back into the system, it can do that. So think of it as like cursor for AI Eng, just built in on top of your data to help you troubleshoot, do your workflows, build prompts, and take action. So pretty awesome. Just help me in my workflows and get out whatever I need to do. So lots of power in this. The last thing I kind of want to show you is just what does online evals look like and what do evals look like. Evals are this constantly running thing that you can do on basically your data. In this example, what I'm doing is I'm running an eval on the project data as spans are coming in. I can set this up. There's pre-set up evals, like toxicity, user frustration, whatever I kind of, some really basic stuff that's pre-set up. But I can also do stuff where Alex can build an eval on the fly, give me an eval to detect user annoyance. I can kind of do these on the fly where I describe what I want, I get the user eval, it knows like the format of my data, what my attributes are, and kind of just helps you with a standard thing to start off with. So this then runs and augments the data as it's running. So AI to help you build AI is absolutely where we're going. And AI to help you evaluate AI is absolutely where we're going. And then you need to collect the data in the first place, which is where the tracing and observability comes in. So there's a lot more that the system does, from annotations and labeling queues and manual workflows to help you assess those. But I'm going to let Dylan later go through some of this in more detail. But hopefully this gives you like a harbor tour of what we do. Appreciate the appreciate the time. So I think at this point, I'd like to invite up Cindy. So thank you, Cindy from Google Cloud.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Google Toronto office. I also know there are many of you in the audience that actually traveled all the way from West Coast to here. So welcome to Toronto. If you're here for the first time, on behalf of Google, welcome you. So my name is Cindy, and I am one of the customer engineering lead in Google Cloud Canada. So I work very closely with our Google Cloud customers, helping them building their generative AI use cases, right now agentic AI use cases. And I want to share a little bit about our perspective on AI and the whole momentum and some of the learnings and things that we see from the industry. I want to start by maybe sharing a little bit about my story and why I am at Google. So just like Jason, I also come from a fairly technical background. I actually came from a data scientist background. So I started doing data science before there was a title called data science. I think I saw some Scotiabankers here. So I was actually one of the first data scientists at Scotiabank. So that's where I started. And then after that, I actually joined Google. And I joined Google in about 5 years ago. So that was back in like early 2020. And at that time, my manager was telling me, because back then we were still in our old office, and Google Brain, the DeepMind team with Jeff Hinton, is still there. So we're just neighbors in the office. And my manager told me that there is this team of ex-DeepMind people. They are building probably one of the largest models that you have ever seen. And can anybody take a guess on who that team of people is? What did they build? You got it, yeah. So it was the founders of Cohere. So they went ahead and built Cohere, which is a very, very proud Canadian startup. And that's where, back then I still didn't fully grasp the content of what this is about to change. So when I was first started at Google, I was actually supporting many of the telcos. So I also saw that there are people from Bell and TELUS. So I probably, crossed paths with you guys in the past. And after I was at Google, I actually left Google and joined a startup in San Francisco with a focus on conversational AI. And at that time, the term Gen AI didn't really get coined. It's still called natural language understanding and Q&A, or natural language processing. And it was during my time at that company that the Gen AI hype really picked up. That's when GPT was first launched, and everybody was all of a sudden very, very excited about generative AI. Also, it was at that time where I decided that I wanted to actually take a pause. And if you've worked at a startup before, so Dylan, I'm looking at you right there, you probably know that you're going to be working very, very crazy hours. I was working PST, EST hours, and outside of work, I'm also a mother of two. So I'm a mother of an 5-year-old and a 10-year-old. And I started to realize that a lot of things that I do probably can be replaced. And I don't want to keep doing things that will be replaced in the very near future. So I decided to do my early retirement. I actually retired, and I took a break and I spent some quality family time, and I started to notice how my kids were interacting with generative AI, and at that time I realized that this technology is probably the most instrumental change that I have ever seen in my lifetime and will impact my future generation. And then what I did is I decided that I need to be in a place where at least I can influence or be in the know of what's coming in terms of AI. And back then, if you remember, when Gen AI first started, Google was not at the forefront. Google was when we had our Palm models, right? Like, I don't think the market reacted with our models well, right? We were late to the market. And I believe there's a reason to that. And this is because when I first worked at Google, I actually worked on a 20% project, which I was actually a machine learning engineer for one of our Google Cloud product. So if you've ever used data loss prevention, which is our redaction tool for PII data, if you've ever used that, you probably came across a little bit of the model that I contributed to. So it was during my time as like a MLE myself, I witnessed the rigorous that was put in place with how we train the model, how we select the training set, how we evaluate it, how we make sure there's no biases during the training process. And I feel like it's because of the process we have put in, we're probably sometimes a little bit late to the market. And I feel like I need to be in a place where if I have to make a bet on, this is just my personal perspective, I know there are many folks here, but if I have to make a bet on if there's a company that can make this new technology more responsible than the others, I would bet on Google. And this is why I came back to Google. And since then, I think you've kind of witnessed how Google have came along the way in terms of generative AI. We have always been in the forefront in terms of continuous advancement coming from our research from Google DeepMind. Also, you have seen a lot of these AI expertise showing up in our products that serves billions of users. So can anybody guess how many products Google has or Alphabet has that has more than 2 billion users? Shout out a number. If you can read the slide, you would probably guess 6 because there are 6 icons showing up there. But that's not the right answer. Ha! Gotcha. The right answer is actually 7. Can anybody guess who recently passed the 2 billion user? No, it's Google Maps, actually. Gemini, we're getting there. If we pass that, we will be real, we will get there. Thank you for that. All right, so yeah, it was actually Google Maps. So with Google, we have the culture of embedding AI into our products, serving billions of users. And powering a lot of this products is our Gemini models, which is our latest version of our Gemini family. And you started to see a lot of the investment Google is making, a lot of the intentional investment DeepMind is making coming into fruition through our Gemini models. This is our latest. If you haven't tried Gemini 2.5 Pro, this is our latest model as of today. I don't know if it will be the latest tomorrow or 5 days from now, who knows, because, GPT-5 just released, and we tend to, you get it. But if you have ever used Gemini 2.5 Pro, you will probably know that some of the big bet that we made, number one is about long context, right? At the start, Google has always focused on infinite context, infinite memory. We published a paper on all the large language models should have infinite context. So from what you can see here, Gemini 2.5 Pro is excellent at looking at long context. We invest deeply into reasoning capability. Our models are multimodal from the training phase, right? It's from the embedding phase. We trained our models in a multimodal way. That's why it's able to handle multimodality so well. And you can start to see this showing up in our models. And of course, Gemini 2.5 is also one of the model that it has the least amount of hallucination and also have a lot of native tool used for grounding, such as Google search grounding. Yeah, things that you probably already know. All right, so I want to also talk about, because I work a lot with Google Cloud customer or Google customer, and why they come to Google when it comes to implementing their AI use cases. Number one, of course, it's around scalability. We have the experience of scaling AI to billions of users, and that's what they can achieve with our platform. And number two is flexibility, right? I would never tell you that Gemini is the best model for everything. That's just wrong. I would be lying. Different models is good for different tasks, and this is why at Google, we do provide the flexibility of using different kinds of models for different tasks. And then, of course, at last, we are built on trust on the Google platform. Yeah, and this is just how we are doing it from a technology perspective. At the bottom layer, we do have our own hypercomputers. So we're the only platform that has vertically integrated stack. We have our own TPUs. We have our own data. We have our model garden, which not just have our Gemini models. We also have third-party models like Anthropic, Claude. We have open source model like Mistral, Gemma. Those are all available on our model garden, and we have Vertex AI as well as the Gemini applications on top of that. And this is what enables us to do what we do from a technology perspective. However, we also have our partners like Arize that enables choice at every layer of doing Gen AI. So we have our hardware partners, we have our foundation models, you see Cohere there, Anthropic, and then we have our technology platform partners. So that's a little bit about the Google Cloud. And of course, we're in year 2025. What we start to hear a lot more is building agents. We're seeing that customers are building customer agent to handle complex customer inquiries. They're building employee agents to helping with employee productivity, and also creative agents, which I love. I actually, this morning, I was in a whole day meeting with one of the largest UGC platform in Canada, and they have so many ideas on how to leverage AI for creatives. Of course, there are data agents, coding agents, and then security agents. So we start to see all kinds of agents start to popping up. And for those of you that haven't done or haven't, I'm pretty sure you have built your own agent, but if you haven't, it's actually very, very simple to build agents from the Google Cloud platform. So you can go directly to the console and start building your own conversational agents. Okay, I'm gonna actually pass here, and I'm gonna share a little bit about the stories that we have seen where our customers have been super successful in terms of AI. I'm sure you will hear directly from Wayfair today on how they leverage agents, but this is just how, even before agent, they were able to leverage our Gemini models to help them. They used to manually tag the product descriptions of the Wayfair catalog, but now with Gemini, they're able to do that, reduce 67% in the time needed. So that's a story about Wayfair. You will hear more today, but I also want to share a story about our very own Canadian company. So if you are ever in the social media space, Viral Nation is one of the leaders in terms of influencer marketing. So what they do is they help companies to pick influencer that adheres to their brand safety guidelines. And the interesting use case is they analyze billions of contents and across different modality and across different languages. So they look at influence posts, they look at the videos, they look at the images, they look at everything, and they try to use AI to adhere to brands' specifications. And they're able to do that with the help of Gemini. So this is a very interesting use case that really highlights the multimodality aspects of Gemini. With this being said, what I did want to wrap this conversation up with is, if you think about where we are at in terms of agent, right? I don't know if some people in the audience, I'm sure there is, thinks that agent is, a little bit of a hyped word. But what I see in terms of AI agent is there's really two things, right? Number one, it needs to be autonomous. Number two, it needs to be optimized. I think in terms of being autonomous, some agents are, half, I would say 30% autonomous. Optimized, very far. So, when my husband built an agent over the weekend, and for applying to jobs, and I was like watching this agent applying to like one job, and it's like, oh my God, it's taking forever. It shouldn't have done that. But anyways, in order to make your agents autonomous and optimized, there are a couple things that I think is really important. Number one is you need to be able to chase it. You need to be able to understand which step along the way. Is it getting into a loop? Is it getting into troubles? Number two is you need to be able to evaluate it. And number three is you need to be able to get feedbacks to the agents. And I think only when you have those three components, which can be enabled through the Arize platform, you are able to build a true agent. So with that being said, I'm going to actually pass it to Dylan to actually show a demo of the platform. Thank you.
All right, I got my mic. Okay. Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you, Cindy. Hi, Toronto. And thank you, Google, for having us. My name is Dylan Kuzon. I am on the developer relationship team at Arize. And today I am going to talk about, oops, sorry. Jason, where's the clicker? Jason, do you still have the clicker by any chance? Yeah, I'm going to talk about feedback-driven agents development. Is that it? Yeah, perfect. No. Is that? Oh, that's you. Thank you. All right. So first, I'm going to start with why do we talk about agents so much at Arize? Because as you may have heard before, 2025 is the year of agents. And personally, I do feel like we are starting to see a slowdown in the research, the academic research, and new developments in transformer models. As some of you may share my opinion with like the recent release of ChatGPT 5 that, if the first ChatGPT model was the iPhone 3, maybe we're at the iPhone 11, where it's kind of the same every year. But now we're seeing what really powers those models. It is agents. It is the ability to make tool calls, to install memory, to have web search, to have reasoning. Those capabilities really power those models, and this is where I do believe we're going to see the most progress in the next few years. So we're going to talk about what breaks in production. So with a show of hand, how many people here have agents in development currently? Most of the room. How many people have agents in production? way less people, as expected. Like, agents are very, very difficult to control, especially in production, and this is very often why a lot of companies struggle to or are hesitant to pull the trigger into putting those agents in front of customers because they don't know what might happen. And this is what we're trying to solve at Arize. So then I'm going to talk about what to measure in those agents and why does that feedback loop matter. Then we're going to move on to a live demo, and then I'm going to show you how to basically turn that feedback that you get from Arize into better agents. So, most of the pain points is that AI systems are extremely complex. They're not just one model call, they're complex orchestrations of multiple steps, API calls, tools, multi-agent systems. And it is very, very hard to have any visibility into those black boxes. Each of these components can introduce latencies, errors, unintended behavior, and making it hard to get a clear picture of what's happening under the hood. Yeah, all right. Very often you have no visibility into how prompts affects a change downstream, because if you have an agent that takes from the input to output 10, 15 steps, how do you know that a change in your prompts at step 5, how do you know those implications of those changes? It is very difficult to quantify the application performance, because before AI, it was very easy to, if you had an app, to get the performance of your applications, to get your latency, your error rates. But when you talk about agents, you talk about retrieval quality, you talk about hallucination rates, you talk about Q&A accuracy. So how do you evaluate those metrics, not with traditional measurements? And what happens when an agent goes off script? So, we all have heard stories, I'm sure. You can have Google that tells you to look into the sun for up to 30 minutes a day, or to eat one small rock a day. Spoiler alert, do not do that. Most recently, there was a case where Replit, which is basically an autonomous AI coding agent that deleted someone's entire database overnight during a code freeze for absolutely no reason. And the AI actually tried to lie about it and deny it at first. So, this is some of the biggest pain points and hurdles when creating AI agents. It's very easy to have something at the beginning that works and that seems to do the right thing. But how do you make sure that those agents still work over time and work in production? I'm going to talk about the parts. There's many things that you can evaluate in an agent, but to me, these are the most important parts that we see teams do, and this is where we see the most success. At first, each agent, and depending on your agent, you can have at the very beginning, when there's a user output, that input usually goes into a router, a top node, or an orchestrator agent. And so from there, how do you know that router selected the correct next step? How do you know that the orchestrator understood the request correctly? And did the orchestrator gather enough context from the user to complete the request? Or is it just trying to guess the next best step? Tools are making agents better than ever until they don't. And how do you measure API call accuracies? How do you measure tool calling errors? Or how do you ensure that your agent actually tools the right tool? How do you make sure that the content it retrieved is appropriate? MCPs are extremely powerful, but they're also a huge security threat. And how do you make sure that the MCP server that you created did not try to inject any prompts into your model? Then there's the decision path. So, even like 2 years ago, LLMs were pretty simple. The paths were very linear. It was just back and forth chatting. Now we see very complex agents with over 100 different nodes. And the step, going back and forth between different nodes, and some agents taking 20 plus steps from input to output. And how do you know that the execution path logic makes sense? How do you know that the context was preserved in between those steps? And if you do the same request multiple times, does your agent take the same path consistently? And lastly, the session. So this is something that's, we're really at the forefront at Arize, and I feel like we're one of the first ones that enables you to evaluate an entire session. So, if you have a chatbot, let's say you go on booking.com, they have a pretty useful AI agent chatbot that you can use to book an entire trip, flights, hotels, stay, and everything. And usually, that's a pretty long conversation, at least 5-10 turns to make sure you select the right hotels. They ask you for which flights do you want, how many people, and how do you, and what Arize empowers you to do is, for example, to verify that the agent's tone was consistent across the whole session. But it can, something that we've all encountered, does the agent keep asking the same question over and over? Does the agent keep track of the context across the entire session? And was the agent able to answer the original question? So, this is a lot of questions, and this is everything we're trying to answer at Arize. And on that, I'm going to move into the demo. All right, perfect. So I do have like a pretty simple trip planner agent. I was supposed to make that demo. We're at Google. I wanted to use Google ADK, Gemini. But because of a small issue on our end, I had to change everything last minute. So Google, forgive me. But let's say I want to travel to Toronto from San Francisco on 8/28. Perfect. So, that agent is gonna do its thing. Take a little minute. Vibe coded last night. Do not expect too much. And actually, we enable you to troubleshoot and improve your agents. So, when I'm going to jump into the platform, I don't want the agent to work too well because I want to be able to detect what went wrong. So it seems that there's been a mix-up in the search results. Yeah, doesn't work too well. It's a 50-50. But then if I jump into the Arize platform, Here we can see like all the traces to our agents. Okay, perfect. So basically, I'm using LangGraph, and so for those who are like familiar with that agent, I basically created a parent node, an orchestrator node that then sends the requests to like different nodes depending on what you asked. So there's an intent classifier to and that node, you know, as its name, the name is pretty self-explanatory. It classifies your intent to make sure to know which node to send it to. So here we can see, like in the backend, we can see the original request, and then the assistant says, "I understand you're looking for information assistance. I have enough information to proceed. Perfect." And then it routes to, and so then it actually decided that my intent was a web search, which was incorrect. But without a tool like Arize, you know, it is very hard to have a good visibility into the insides of your agents. So here I can see that actually I wanted my intent was flight search, not web search. And so from here, I know which parts of the agents to troubleshoot. So also so you know what I just did. So like here I can put an annotation here that says wrong tool. So you know when you're in development, you're testing your agent, this is probably what you want to do. Wrong tool call. I do like to explain the problem, and more than you know, you can add annotations. For example, I have like an accuracy notation. I can say accurate or inaccurate here. But I actually want to give an explanation, and you will see later why. Wrong tool call should have called flight info. All right. So, you know, this is like in development, and then that's for those who are like familiar with meta prompting. So it is, you know, prompting an agent and giving it examples. So what you can do is that those traces where you have like annotations where you know which ones are wrong and which ones are right, you can add them to a data set that you call like a golden data set. And that golden data set can be used to train your agent through meta prompting. So once you're in production, you know, you cannot have people evaluating all your traces in the back. So we do have like evals task, and so they can be run like in code or inside the dashboard. And basically, so we're running a little behind on time, and like Jason already gave like a brief overview of those evals. But yeah, basically you can have that eval in the dashboard that tests QA correctness, that tests you know, like the session accuracy or anything that I talked about before. All right, and then I want to talk. So I want to talk about like the feedback formats a little bit. So for those who are like, and like especially like in machine learning, you've probably spent a lot of time evaluating, giving formats, you know, giving a gradient score from 1 to 5, or just a binary yes or no, correct, inaccurate. But we do like giving like English feedback, either through human annotations or LLM-as-a-judge. And why? It is because so that feedback should be used to like iterate over your prompts and improve them over time to create, you know, like self-improving agents, agents that can evolve on your feedback. And on a score or just a 1 or 0, you know, it is very difficult to know what went right or what went wrong, and it is difficult for the agents to improve on that feedback. So this is why we like to use, this is why we suggest like using English feedback as much as possible. And then we're working on something that is called prompt learning. That is basically an SDK that allows you to, it's like you can store your prompts in Arize, like we're a prompt IDE platform. And we also store that feedback. And so basically what we're working on is closing that loop on self-evaluating agents. And we have the prompts, we have the feedback, and how can we improve and automatically improve your agents and your prompts based on that feedback. And this is what we can see here, kind of how we see agents work in the future. Or at least, or some agents are already working today. It is with a constant iteration and feedback and self-improvement. And all right, I had a few takeaways. I'm not going to read through all of that. We're running a little behind already. But yeah, that was it. Thank you so much, everyone. If you want to scan that QR code, this is for Phoenix, our open source platform. If you want to start tracing and evaluating your agents today. All right.
Thank you. I guess we'll step up. Do you have the clicker? Okay, awesome. I think we're here. Well, thank you all for getting through here. We have a bit of a session here where I think we're telling you earlier about what we do, but now we'll have someone in the trenches tell you what it's really like to build the stuff. Want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, really great to meet you. My name is Victor. I am the Senior Product Manager for Gemini Solutions at Wayfair. So like many of you, I've actually built a lot of the products. I've used a lot of open source platforms. My history includes being in the Canadian market. So I've worked at a healthcare company. I moved over to Uber Eats, worked on a lot of ML data science stuff. Got an opportunity at Meta, and I worked there, worked on Meta Lattice, AI tech. When the Gen AI boom happened, I worked on generative AI ads. So if you ever want to be really creeped out, find me after. I'll tell you what Meta's cooking. It's crazy. And then after that, I now work at Wayfair. I'm really happy about the stuff that we've done, and we've got a great partnership with Arize. Awesome.
Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about what like AI and agents at scale is like at Wayfair? Is it at scale?
Yeah, I mean, like Cindy really called it out. Like we've found a ton of revenue generating, cost savings agents here at Wayfair. A lot of it is really predicated on understanding what the true KPIs are, figuring what that is, getting senior leadership buy-in, and then going and deploying. And so historically at scale, what Wayfair has done is, we've built it, we've tried to justify it, and then we've just kind of kept hitting this brick wall. And we've understood, taking a step back, that we needed to work on a better LLM-ops framework. So similar to how you've seen the MLOps or DevOps, do not sleep on LLM-ops in your company or your startup or wherever you're at. And so by doing that, we've understood that, let's leverage Vertex to its full capabilities. We've already seen that from an ML perspective. And we've started incorporating Arize from the very beginning instead of at the very end. You think evaluation, and so you're evaluating your work instead of thinking of how you can evaluate first and then jump into starting to develop to help substantiate why you're building what you're building.
Yeah, I think the doing this stuff earlier, just to get it to a spot where you can actually deploy it is powerful. What like in terms of like the agent, any examples of like the types of agents that you have and you're working on?
Yeah, I think there's a few organizations that do this really well. Like our customer tech teams have worked on some agents that are consumer facing. That, like Dylan had mentioned, is very dodgy to work on. So we've kind of worked on navigating some of that from a tonality perspective. We've looked at our supply chain, and we've worked on a really amazing product that helps our human agents actually get to resolving these tickets much quicker. And so that's been phenomenal. And so we've looked at multi-agent frameworks. We've looked at orchestrators, which one would be ideal for that, tooling these agents together, getting some of that tool call together, MCPs incorporated into that, and then starting to deploy. So at scale, you could think like, Cindy kind of mentioned it about like a 2% revenue bump on one of our catalog enrichment agents for a Q&A one. That 2% doesn't seem like a substantial number, but when you're thinking of billions of revenue every single year, every single month, like that is a huge amount of money that we've saved by just leaning into AI and doing it responsibly. And so lots of agents. And so at Wayfair, we've started to think about, do we want to federate this, or do we want to like decentralize this? Should we have a centralized model? So we've really decentralized this to the teams. And so there almost isn't, like, it's hard, you'd be hard pressed to find a team that isn't working on some type of Gen AI solution or some type of agentic, or solution that has some type of agentic properties within it.
I think it's, I feel like I see that at a lot of places, that we're all prompt engineers these days. And so hard to hold a team back and say, you can't do this when they do it every day. So absolutely. Any multi-agent kind of stuff going on at Wayfair? Is it just like single agents, multi-agent, or is that just on the horizon?
Yeah, I think I would say a very small amount of our projects are actually multi-agentic right now. So like I mentioned, for the supply chain, that one has been really huge. And so the best way that we've kind of incorporated that is to actually get some human level annotation. So start with, co-piloting, understanding what are some of those annotators from what the human agents are actually doing, getting that data, matching that to what Dylan mentioned, to our golden data set, to get that ground truth level data. That has helped us out a lot. That has helped us to get into a framework where you now have a communication agent, a routing agent, a multi-agentic. Sorry, it's like slipping my mind, but there's like a bunch within the architecture. And so it's gotten us to get to this point where we've used the right frameworks, we've used the right data, we were using the right tools, and so we lean heavily into open source platforms. And so we've gained a lot of good insights and value add from partnering up with using Vertex and also Arize.
It's awesome. I think on the multi-agent one, I tend to, it's hard enough to make one of these work. so it's not, I don't know if I'd leap there. I mean, there's some companies like Anthropic who really push it, and Claude Code, if you've looked at the dissection of it, it does have whole tool calls that are agent in itself. But I think it's more the rare, the rare company that's kind of at that level right now, or taking those bets.
Yeah, I think it's like when you get to multi-agents, so much can go wrong so quickly.
Yes.
And so it's hard to know what happens. Like, where do you trace back that error? Like, why is it, instead of giving you the exact ID, why is it giving you like price tags? Like, what's going on there? Tracing it back and annotating it to exactly what happened and what that span looked like is so valuable. And so I wouldn't say we have like a large amount of multi-agentic work. It is very hard to substantiate that because so much can go wrong. But given the right orchestrator and the right tools and the right framework, it does work out. Like we joke at Wayfair, we kind of see it as like, if you want to tackle on the Death Star, like you obviously need a lightsaber, and if you want to use it properly, you got to work with Yoda. And so Arize is like our Yoda that tells us, how to really navigate through that. And so
I love it. As a Star Wars fan, there's no bigger compliment. I love it. How do you start with this stuff? Like, are you like? I know your team picked up actually some of the open source evals that we had originally in Phoenix early on, or the eval running stack. Like, how do you use these solutions? What are important use cases? And then feel free to pepper on also any of the other stuff you use.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of places that you can start, but the thing that I really appreciate is two things. One, the templates that Arize has out of the box, that's been like a lifesaver. People, when they're starting to build, there's like, okay, well, I could actually start looking at some of the prompting here up front, and then it gets our engineers thinking. So it really helps us build a lot better. But it really comes back down to like the ROI and justification of why we're doing what we're doing. It's not enough to say like, leadership is bought in. It's like we actually need to think about what the outcomes are. It is very difficult now in this climate. Everything is very budget centric to actually say, hey, let's spend all this money doing this when there could be a potential opportunity elsewhere. What we found is that, yes, we can talk about the outcomes and the value add, but like, what is the future plan of the stuff that we're building and how can that potentially decrease in costing over time? Models do get cheaper for sure, but if you're looking at how you can evaluate it and evaluate it properly, then you could slowly chip away at what that monthly cost looks like and weekly cost for API calls and save a ton of money. And then when you have that bigger vision up front, it really helps get a lot of buy-in. And so at Wayfair, we have this software spend governance team that really looks at like what you're building, where you're going with it. And so having that approach up front has like honestly gotten us so many more products out the door. And so we're seeing our revenue go up, and then now stock's going up. And so there's a flywheel effect of more folks now, investing more into like some of these Gen AI solutions, which is really great. So we're seeing the fruits of our labor from stuff that we've been building for the last 6-9 months. So it's really great.
I feel like Wayfair's always been like a heavy investment in AI. I also think like when we first were doing LLM-as-a-judge, Phoenix had it almost 2 years ago. Some teams would grab onto it, some teams would not. I feel like you guys have been doing it for a while. Is it some is in code, some is in our platform. Like I think you have a whole pipelines where you run the stuff. Like how do teams do it? Does every team do it? Does the team just makes a call on whether they should use it or not? Any idea of how you got these, how Wayfair picks up these solutions and decides what to use where?
Yeah. I like LLM-as-a-judge is like where things are right now. And I think it's super exciting. And the fact that, we could obviously set that up with a lot of projects is fantastic. We've seen the best success with like multi-agentic solutions and products. So we've gotten a lot of success from that front. I feel, and I'm going to diverge, but I'll come right back. I think where the industry is going, and from, speaking with a lot of data scientists and some really smart people, we're seeing our products go from like leveraging LLM-as-a-judge to potentially leveraging LLM-as-a-jury. So getting more of that set up. And it's great because we could be creative with your solution, actually set that up within it. And so we can actually get there. And so highly recommend looking up, obviously LLM-as-a-judge, everything under the hood with that, but then also where the industry is going with LLM-as-a-jury, because that's where we're going. We're seeing a lot of fruitful gains and successes from that, from an evaluation standpoint. And so our teams are not just, incorporating that. We're seeing success from multi-agentic solutions, but we're seeing a lot more of like, where else can we go with it? And that jury portion is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll drop my little note on where I've seen that. So I've seen it used in like when the answer is like it's like a proxy. Like all this stuff is, you've used you use ChatGPT or Gemini enough to know like the solutions are just not guaranteed. But if you really want a really tight answer, using like 3 LLMs, maybe different LLMs, to judge is a common thing. We did one thing recently with a client where they had a human annotator annotate a bunch of data, spent a lot of money with a big name annotator, and then did a LLM-jury on that, and then had a super judge to see how the human annotators get tired, and when we looked at it, the jury in this case was actually better than the individual annotator. I don't want to oversell every use case is like this, but in cases where the training data that the LLM's trained on actually has some insights into the answer, you're going to get really good results and feel better as you get a set in. It's a lot to run, so you don't overkill it. You don't need that in every case, but when answers matter, I would do that.
Yeah, yep. And I think the point that you touched up on is it's very use case specific. So we're not going to just kind of incorporate that in almost every product, but for the products that we have seen, it has been really good. So that one that Cindy had flagged for catalog enrichment, we did that, found tons of success with it.
What about agent frameworks? So kind of actually, how many people here are using agent frameworks? Right, and these are like the lane graphs, data. That's not as many hands as I expected. lane graphs, there's an agent framework every week these days. How do you choose an agent framework, and like what do you, any opinions you have on that side?
I have a strong opinion on this, and I would suggest going as open source as you possibly can. And that's not just because I came from Meta and everything's open source there, but like I just highly recommend like going for open source solutions. Actually, open source is what got us with Arize. Like I've seen Vertex actually partner up very well with a lot of open source solutions. So that's been really good. We've landed at LangChain. We've been using that for literally every product. I think there's like maybe one that doesn't do it. And they're just contrarians. But we found a lot of great success with that. I will say that like an orchestrator can call different agents. It works really well. One layer that I would also encourage people to start thinking about is also A2A from Google. That's been really beneficial. So agent cards, I think, is really something that we've seen some great success with. So if you were to think an orchestrator as, literally an orchestrator for a band, telling like when the drummer should play or when the violinist should start going, orchestrator is fantastic. But A2A, thinking about agent cards, it's almost like the LinkedIn profile for the agent. So it knows what agents do what, and then it could get the agents to communicate to each other. Really great efficiencies gains from there. And so by picking the right, orchestrator, think of this as us getting, the faster speed, like prompt chaining, like the commands that we can actually set up there. So, but with that, especially with multi-agent frameworks, there's a lot of elements where you lose sight, from the high-level abstractions, and so as a result of that, you lose some of that control. And so the best path forward, and I know I keep saying Arize, but like then now we understand from these multi-agent frameworks, we've lost some of that visibility for a trade-off of speed. Now we can get some of that back by understanding where these agents have gone wrong, scaling it back, getting that trace, versioning it, and then getting to a path of much faster success with better controls.
On the MCP one, how many people here have actually touched MCP in some way? Okay, a handful. I think it's like somewhat a mixed bag. Like I feel like the Silicon Valley startup scene, you hear about it a lot on the enterprise side. There's interest, but less production. So I think I'm gung ho on the concepts and ideas behind these A2As or the MCPs. But I think the hype versus actually production deployment varies quite a lot. I think company to company.
Yeah, so. I agree. And talking about MCPs, like my view is going to be so product focused. Like it is like a far cry from a group of engineers here. So like my perspective is this, right? Like I think Dylan flagged it. Like MCPs has the ability to be like this super awesome tool or vulnerability as a service. And so you really got to be careful with it. And the way that we've kind of found success with it is we've taken one giant step back and figured out what our context strategy is. Yeah. And so at Wayfair, our context strategy is one, looking at the different domains. We have 7 layers. I'll share with you 3. 2 is the semantic store-based context. So if someone wants to select something, it's not going to give you all the information under Wayfair. It's going to be whatever you needed for your specific task and what you're able to get. And then the third one is like that governance, that guardrails, and that's where our MCPs fall in. So think of this as like the internal community-based MCPs as well as the vendor-based MCPs. And so by having a context strategy, now we can understand, like thinking legal first and security first, which MCPs can we incorporate? Obviously the vendor ones, table stakes, those ones are easy to set up. We can get that off the ground. When we start thinking about community-based MCPs and some of the internal ones that we work on, we have to pause and think of like what's best for Wayfair. How can we enable this in a fast, secure manner without having any potential hiccups? So highly recommend all of you just like thinking about MCPs in the form of context and what type of context we want to be injecting and how we want to work with that will really get you, one step back to get you 2 steps forward.
Yeah, I've been feeling that across a lot of the customer base, which is the security issues have not been ironed out here. So be wary. Definitely be wary. So yeah, I think any last things you want to add? I appreciate you.
Yeah, I think we've been like early partners with Arize. We've
Yeah.
seen tons of success. Data science, ML teams are actually like they like die by your product. So like, thank you for making my life easier as a
Appreciate it.
PM. But I will say, like, when you are shopping around for whatever evaluator you're looking for, please consider two things. And you don't have to be technical or non-technical to really consider this. It's one, how much of a community they foster around their product. So if it is open sourced, you do get like leaps and bounds ahead. And the other one is like the customer success and support you get. My God, I bother Sammy so much, and she's constantly helping me out and my entire team. So like there's going to be elements where you do get a little bit stuck. A lot of this is new. You want to be building responsibly. So having the right support in your back pocket has been very helpful for us.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Victor.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. With that, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it, and we'll be around after here. So thank you.